Hey everybody, Ryan here. Today I'm just going to do day number 6 in the JavaScript 30 course. I'm going to try to make it quick today. So basically what this is a search form with suggestions. So if I type in loss, it'll bring up some cities with the LOS in it. If I type in new, it'll bring up a bunch of cities with the NEW in it, and it can be in the middle of the word too. That's fine. So basically how I did this was first let's take a look at the HTML. The HTML is pretty simple. It's literally just a form, and then we have our script, and then he basically gives you this endpoint, which is just some JSON. So if I take that, copy it, paste it into there, you can see it's just JSON data that we're pulling. So the first thing I did was I just cached my elements. I grabbed the form, the input, and the list, and then I attached an event listener to the form for the listener for the submit. All I'm doing there is preventing the default and just making a console log. So I'm just stopping it from refreshing the page when I hit enter. If I say we're clicked in here and I hit enter, that submits the form. So see form submitted. So there we go. So that submits the form. So that's all that's doing. That's not that much. So it doesn't really. This is the like where the actual app is doing things. So I'm listening for an input event on the input, so that fires every single time you type into this input. We're running this function. Basically, we're setting up an async function because this is where we're grabbing our information. I'm checking if JSON data.length is equal to 0. We created an empty array up here called JSON data. That's where we're going to cache our data once we retrieve it. So I'm making sure, first checking, is that array empty? And if it is, then we're going to fetch the stuff. And if it's not, which it won't be after it runs the first time, this will be full, so we won't have to refetch our data every time that someone types into this form. It just fetches it once, and then we have it to use for the rest of the life of the page. So we're fetching the endpoint from this thing. We're getting the response, and we're taking the response, and then we're converting it to JSON, and now we have our JSON data. Then down here, we have our suggestions, and we're running our first function called filter suggestions. So we're taking the value that's in the form currently, e.target.value. So e.target of the input is going to be whatever we have typed in here, and then we have our JSON data. And so this is designed to be kind of like a pure function, like it takes in the value, it takes in the data, filters through it, and gives you some results depending on it. So what we're doing inside of there, as I'll show you here, is first we're checking to see if it's an array, and then we are filtering through it. So for each city object, the solution he uses in his course uses a lot of regular expressions. I didn't do that. I used index of and string concatenation to solve the problem my way, but he uses regular expressions, so that's a perfectly valid way of doing it. It might even be more elegant in some people's opinion, but I like this solution too. So I'm just converting everything to lowercase, so the search string and the city name to lowercase, so the cases still match. Then I'm saying highlight start index is the index of the lowercase search string. So we're taking the string that we're searching, and we're searching through our city name, each city name in our JSON. We're searching through it, and if we can find the index of that substring, it'll return it and put it into highlight start index. Now if it doesn't find anything, it'll return -1. And that's why down here, we check to see if it's -1. And if it is, we just return false from our filter, which means that this city object won't be included in our new array, and it'll move on to the next one to see if it needs to filter that one too. So over here, we skipped over this little piece. This is our highlight in text. So basically we're getting the start index. So let's say like we type in new. So the start index would be 0 here for New York, but say for Kennewick, it would be 0, 1, 2, 3. So it would start here, it'd be 3. And then we need to find out where's the end of the highlight. So the way we can do that is by taking the search string, finding out how long that is, and then we can just assume that if it's a match, that it starts where index of indicated, and then we just add the length of the search string, and that should be where the end of the match is. So that's all I'm doing here at highlight end, is I'm taking the start index that we found with index of, and then I'm just adding the length of the string that we're searching. And that's how I get the indexes of our end of the highlight. So you can imagine a string like an array, and we're just grabbing the indexes of where the highlight is. So now that we have all that information, we can just attach it to the city object in JavaScript. We grab our city object here that filter's given us, and we can just assign properties willy-nilly to it. Some people don't like this, but I find it useful in this situation. So we're attaching highlight start index and highlight index to this object for later use in our other function. So that's all we're doing there. We're filtering out, we're filtering out the arrays or the strings that don't match our search. And then we are also finding out where the highlight starts and ends for that particular word if it is a match. And then we just return true, because if we passed here, we have to assume that there's a match. And so we attach the highlights and we would just return true. And then our next function, so that's how we get our suggestions. And then the next thing, once we have our list of suggestions, the last step is just converting that stuff into a DOM string that we can inject into the DOM. So that's all I'm doing in this next function, is I'm also checking to make sure data is an array. And then I'm just reducing it to a string. So I'm using reduce here. This is a big function. And then the first accumulator value is just an empty string. I take the accumulator, we destructure out those highlight indexes that we attached in the last function. And then we basically are just chopping up this string now, the city name string. We're going to chop it up and then join it all back together. So at the beginning of chopping it up, we're going to start text is going to be the, from the beginning to wherever the start index is. Now, some of these, like here, it'll be literally an empty string because the index is 0 and then the highlight start is at 0. So it's just going to be an empty string. However, down here in Kennewick, it's going to be the letters K-E-N are going to be our start text. And same for West is going to be WST space is going to be our start text. And the highlight text is just going to be a substring of the city name again with our highlight start index and highlight end index. And the end text is just going to be, again, we're taking the same string and we're kind of chopping it up here. And then the last one is going to be our highlight end text. So if we just supply one number to substring, it's just going to go from that index to the end of the word. So now here is where we are returning our accumulator plus equals a string, and the string inside of it is going to be an li with some spans in it. So we have a parent span, and then inside we have 3 separate spans to represent our start text, our highlight text with the class of HL, and our end text. And the reason I have these comments here is to avoid a white space glitch you get with spans when you have them all. You try to have them vertically aligned. There's actually a new character, it's hidden in the file that actually ends up showing in the browser, so you can escape that by just adding an HTML comment to the end of each span if you wanted to. Alternatively, I could have just done this. That would do the exact same thing, but let me just show you real quick. So go new, so that works, right? Just like I did before. If I put all 3 of these on a line, save it, and go new, Newport News, Kennewick. See how it's splitting them up? These little white spaces here. That's because there's a new line character here in the editor that's being inserted into the HTML. So if I just use the HTML comment syntax, so dash dash there, I close that. Now you'll see if I search that again. New. See, because we didn't do it here, it still has the space, but because we added this comment here, Newick, there's no space here anymore, and so we can just and now it works. See, it's all one word now. So that's all for this video. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed. Please stay tuned for more. Thanks for watching. Bye.